So I'm working on this embroidery again. Uh, this is a white rotary treadle sewing machine, and I have removed the feed dogs, and I did that because it just makes it a little easier. This machine, like many really old machines, you couldn't lower the feed dogs. Now, some of the older machines have a metal plate option that would go over the feed dogs and cover those up. I didn't have one for this, and removing the feed dogs is really easy. It's just you take the cover plate off, and it's one screw and it comes right out. So I can put it back together no problem. But it was easier to remove it. I've also taken off the foot because I don't need it, and my fabric is in a hoop. And for this particular project, I'm also using a tearaway paper stabilizer on the back, and that is helping to keep it from puckering. This fabric what I'm embroidering on here is a vintage quilt top, and not really pieced very well at all, so it's puckery, and it's hard to get the fabric in nice and tight and flat into the hoop. If you can get, if you're doing this with a nice new piece of fabric, nicely smooth, you can get it into the hoop really tight, and you won't have a problem. But because this is all kind of a little off and a little wonky and sort of puckery, and it's easier to add that stabilizer. And I'm basically, for this design, I'm just doing a bunch of straight stitching, and stitch length is regulated by how fast you move the hoop. So it doesn't matter. Like I said, I took the feed dogs out, and that's what regulates your stitch length. So without those, the stitch length is regulated by how fast I move the hoop. I have green thread in the bobbin, and I'm using, this is a polyester 40 weight machine embroidery thread. And what else? I'm just sort of making this up as I go, and that's kind of fun. It might look kind of weird right now, but eventually, when I get the whole design in, you'll hopefully get a better idea of what I'm after. Right now, I'm just sort of doing various shades of green, and when I get them all filled in, it sort of has kind of vine-like, but not really, kind of an organic feel to it. Anyway, this is really just sort of doodling, and really kind of fun because you can't make a mistake when you're doing something that's very representational. If you're trying to do a portrait or a picture of an animal or a landscape, if you start going off the design, people can tell. But on something that's very abstract, or non-representational anyway, it's a lot harder to tell if you've screwed up. So I'm just basically sort of doing a back and forth to get the spaces to fill in where I'm wanting them filled in. Then after I get a good section of it done in the area that I have hooped, I move it and do the next section. Once it's all done, I'll tear off that stabilizer that I have on the back, and then I can quilt it. And this might seem kind of weird, but lately I'm into trying new things, and so that's what I'm doing here. Now, can you see, I don't know if it's showing, do you see how that fabric is sort of bouncing up and down around that needle? That's because I can't get it really tight enough in the hoop, and it makes it jump. So what I do, or what I can do to make that less of a problem, is keep my fingers really close to the work. And it scares people to see me do this because you're afraid I'm going to sew my fingers. I don't think that I am. I'm being very careful, and this machine is running very slowly. I'm operating it with my foot. You know, it's a treadle, and so going quite slowly, and it's, you know, I can start and stop this thing with, you know, really no problem whatsoever. So it's not as dangerous as it might look to get your fingers that close. Now, if you don't have a treadle machine, and more people than not don't, you certainly can get this same kind of project. You can do the same thing with an electric machine. It's not something that you can only do on the treadle. So don't let that be your deterrent. If you have a plain old straight stitch electric machine, you can do it. You may also have, with one of your machines, you might have what they call a three-motion embroidery foot, and you could do the same thing with that on. And the advantage there is it puts a little protection between the needle and your fingers. The foot will keep the pressure on the fabric so you don't have to get your fingers so close. And the only problem, as I see it, having one of those feet on, is that it is a little harder to see. Without the foot in the way, I have full view of that needle and I can see exactly what I'm doing. And sometimes I do better when I can really get a good view of the whole thing. Unfortunately, I've never been able to figure out how to do quilting without any foot on, because sometimes that's the hardest part, is being able to see. Now, again, you're probably, because this fabric is not, I can't get it tight because of the nature of what I'm doing. You're starting to see a few puckers, perhaps. Those will, if they are not all covered in the embroidery that I'm going to do, they will, by and large, they will disappear when I quilt it. I plan to do some pretty heavy quilting around this piece, and mostly it'll be echo quilting, which is where the quilting will outline the shapes that I'm creating. So if you see any little puckers in there now, don't worry about it, they'll all go away. And I think perfection is overrated, and so I'm not one to make anything be perfect, and I certainly am not going to lose sleep over a few puckers. Anyway, I hope that from the angle of the camera that I have today, you're able to get a sense of how much the hoop is moving and how fast I'm running the machine. I'm actually going, I think, a little faster than I normally would without the camera on. It's hard to keep behaving normally when you know that there's a camera looking at you. But you want to go fairly slow and try to keep the movements of the hoop rather smooth. And again, this is just regular straight stitching. If you wanted to do this more in the style of satin stitching, your movement of the hoop is much more back and forth, and the up and down of the needle is even slower. So it would be more like if I can show you without. This kind of back and forth like that, which I'm less good at, but I'm sure I could do it with practice. Anyway, I'm liking this straight stitch better actually for what I'm doing. When I started, I did the dark green, and I did that quite simple. And then as I added rows of color, I'm adding more kind of blobs around the edges, and I will continue that with the next color, which is another row around that, and sort of keep going. If you're in a real hurry, this is probably not the project for you. one of the things that I enjoy about it is, particularly with this machine, and you may not be picking that up from the camera either, but this machine is so smooth and quiet. It's really a treat. And I just kind of like to listen to that rhythm and relax. It's really a kind of a soothing thing. One of the important things to remember when you're doing this kind of work, there's no foot on, so you may forget to lower the lever that's supposed to bring the foot down. And even though there's no foot, that lever still needs to be down, and that's because that lever, when it's in the down position, is what puts the tension on the tension discs. And if you don't remember to put it down, you're going to end up with a giant puckered mess on the back, and you don't want that to happen. So let me pull this out of the way and show you some of the areas that I have done already, and you can maybe get a better idea of where I'm going. And so this will sort of meander all over the whole entirety of the quilt, and there'll be some areas where it's big empty spaces with just the piecing, and some of it where this kind of wanders through it. So anyway, that's where I'm going with this, and I'm hopeful that I'll have a little more of that to show you sometime soon. What I don't have in front of me is my scissors, so I'm going to have to turn off the camera and go figure out where I left them so I can cut this off. But I think that's probably enough for you to see what it is that I'm doing. So happy stitching.